This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Former Attorney General Jeff Sessions is now back home in Alabama after his resignation yesterday at the request of the president. President Donald Trump was frustrated with Sessions for more than a year for recusing himself from the Russia investigation. CBN's Jenna Browder has more of the story from Washington.
President Trump made his frustration with Jeff Sessions no secret, and yesterday, just one day after the midterm elections, took action asking for Sessions' resignation. Sessions departed the Justice Department in an emotional farewell.
I know, Jenna, you and I have been with the president where he has privately talked about Jeff Sessions and been very frustrated. I mean, he's publicly talked about it, but he's also privately been very frustrated with the fact that he recused himself. So this has been in the hopper for a while.
His replacement and former Chief of Staff Matthew Whitaker will now oversee the Russia investigation. That's raising concerns because of Whitaker's criticisms of the probe headed by Robert Mueller.
I could see a scenario where Jeff Sessions is replaced with a recess appointment, and that Attorney General doesn't fire Bob Mueller, but he just reduces the budget so low that his investigation grinds to almost a halt.
Nancy Pelosi, who's aiming to be the next Speaker in the new Democrat-controlled House, tweeted, "It is impossible to read Attorney General Sessions' firing as anything other than another blatant attempt by real Donald Trump to undermine and end Special Counsel Mueller's investigation." Others are already promising investigations. In a press conference Wednesday, President Trump vowed to work with House Democrats and spoke well of Pelosi.
You know, she loves this country, and she's a very smart woman. She's done a very good job.
But he warned that investigations can work both ways.
They can play that game, but we can play it better because we have a thing called the United States Senate, and all you're going to do is end up in back and forth and back and forth, and 2 years is going to go up, and we won't have done a thing.
And there could be many investigations into the president when Democrats take control of the House this winter. They've already talked about issuing a subpoena for President Trump's tax returns. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Old Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in the hospital after a fall in her office. It reportedly happened Wednesday evening, and the justice went to George Washington University Hospital in Washington, D.C. early Thursday after experiencing discomfort overnight. In her absence, the court was going ahead Thursday with a courtroom ceremony welcoming new Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who joined the court last month. And joining us now to discuss the latest on Ginsburg and Sessions is Aaron Dunn with the Washington Examiner. Thanks for joining us, Aaron.
Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, let's talk about the latest with President Trump and what's next after Sessions' resignation. Where does Trump go from here?
So Trump is looking to replace Jeff Sessions with somebody who's going to be much more loyal than his previous attorney general. And in doing so, Trump should really consider the implications for his 2020 run, in particular that if he appoints somebody who seriously interferes with the Mueller investigation, that denies Trump probably his best talking point, which is to say that they investigated him and found nothing wrong, and that the whole thing really was a witch hunt.
Do you think that Sessions' replacement will play a different role with the Russia investigation?
This is exactly what Trump hopes that he will do, although I would caution that whoever Trump does appoint will face serious pushback from Congress and from the public if he does try to interfere with the investigation. Moreover, from Trump's own perspective, it would be wise to consider that even cutting the funding for the Mueller probe, which I know is something that has been discussed, could be considered as obstruction of justice.
One of your colleagues wrote that Sessions can thank Senate Republicans for his early retirement. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So what my colleague was really getting at here is that the only thing that was keeping Sessions in office was his support from Republicans in the Senate. And that was really because senators like Chuck Grassley thought that Jeff Sessions was key to remaining in power, because if Jeff Sessions were replaced, that would push the Senate to reconfirm a new attorney general, and that would prevent the Senate from getting on with the serious business of appointing new judges and actually doing the business of governing. So now that Grassley has said that he, has a nonchalant approach to Jeff Sessions remaining in office, that backup support that Sessions had in the Senate is gone, and that was a green light for Trump to go on and make moves to appoint somebody new. And he started by doing that by firing Sessions.
Let's talk about Justice Ginsburg now. Of course, Americans are wishing her a speedy recovery, but her situation highlights the possibility that somewhere down the road with aging justices, Trump could have another Supreme Court nominee. Do you think the nation is ready, and what would that look like at this point?
I'll start off by saying that, as we know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in great health, and she probably will have a speedy recovery, as we are all hoping for. And I'll add to that, as my colleague Tiana Lowe wrote this morning, that it's probably way too early for either the left or the right to be speculating about where we go from here. That being said, we all know that Supreme Court justices are, in fact, human, and like the rest of us, will not be on this planet forever. With that, I think that what the nation really needs is to avoid the contentious and divisive theatrics that we saw with the Kavanaugh hearings, is that to not set the country on a good course for ensuring that we have a high court that can actually carry out the justice that this country needs.
Looking forward now, as far as with President Trump, what do you think the next 2 years are going to be like?
I think that these next 2 years really depends on how Democrats and Republicans can find ways to work together. You have a divided government, so that sets us up for potentially some big wins on both sides if the House and the Senate can come together and work on legislation for things that Trump has mentioned that are key to him, such as health care and criminal justice reform, as well as military spending. Now, I think that having Democrats in the House makes some of that more difficult and will definitely be a challenge on both sides. But hopefully both sides can demonstrate that they actually can govern. And Republicans in particular have a good role to play here, demonstrating that they actually care far more about grandstanding than some of the Democrats that we saw doing this in the Senate.
And there's also been talk that they could find common ground on infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, infrastructure is one of the key things that Trump talked about in his 2016 campaign, and we had yet to see any significant progress on that materialize recently. That being said, Democrats have also campaigned heavily on infrastructure as a program to boost jobs. That would allow Trump and Democrats to find common ground and hopefully bring along some of their Republican colleagues who are also interested in seeing the economy continue to boom in the United States.
All right, Aaron Dunn with the Washington Examiner. Thanks for your time, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
Pro-life supporters are cheering the results of 2 out of 3 abortion issues from Tuesday's election. Voters in both Alabama and West Virginia approved measures to change their state constitutions to effectively outlaw abortion. However, the federal law making abortion legal takes precedent over any state laws. But if Roe v. Wade is overturned, Alabama and West Virginia are now poised to immediately outlaw abortion and preclude women from suing over the ban. The West Virginia vote also put an end to Medicaid-funded abortions there. However, in Oregon, voters there decided to continue paying for abortions with Medicaid. Oregon is one of only 16 states to do that. The gunman has been identified in America's latest mass shooting. It happened this time in California. Authorities say former Marine Ian David Long killed himself after killing 12 others inside a California bar.
I was to the front door. I was talking to my stepdad, and I just started hearing these big pops, pop, pop, pop. There was probably 3 or 4. I hit the ground.
Customers at the Borderline Bar were there for its college country night. The popular spot in Thousand Oaks is about 45 minutes from Los Angeles.
Upon going through the front door, the sheriff's sergeant was struck multiple times with gunfire, and there were multiple other victims of different levels of injury inside that were rescued from the scene and taken to local hospitals.
Witnesses said the scene was chaotic.
I saw him point to the back of the cash register, and he just kept firing. I ran out the front door. I hear chairs being thrown out the window. People were trying to get out the window, and the gunman went behind the cash register. There was probably 12 shots before I got out the front door.
People scrambled for safety, fleeing in panic.
As our first deputies arrived on scene, they also heard shots.
This man helped pull people to safety.
And he basically was unloading, and all I did was grab as many people as I could and pull them underneath the table, and then till I heard the shots, till I heard a break in the shots, and then we got people out of there as much as we could.
Police say they still don't know a motive for the shooting. A Texas teenager believes God saved her life after being shot this week while praying in her home near Houston. 17-year-old Kimberly Mendoza told ABC 13 that she had just knelt down for her nightly prayer when a bullet shot through the wall behind her and grazed her arm. The news outlet reports the bullet barely missed the back of her head. Mendoza says she was praying to God for strength when the bullet hit her arm. Authorities say they believe someone fired it from a nearby apartment complex. Mendoza praised God for protecting her.
I know God is so great. He loved me, I know.
Amen. First responders took Mendoza to the hospital and treated her injury. Authorities say no arrests have been made. They say if the teen had not been kneeling, the situation could have been a lot worse. Coming up, the spin after the standoff between President Trump and CNN's Jim Acosta just a day after the 2018 election. It has some wondering, is there any hope for fairness and civility? Welcome back. CNN's Jim Acosta's press pass at the White House is revoked following his standoff with the president in a post-election news conference. And now Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, in announcing it, has been accused of fake news for using edited video of Acosta. Here to talk about it and to give us his perspective on the media is Media Research Center's Dan Gaynor. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
First of all, let's talk about what happened. Did Acosta go too far, or did the president?
Look, Acosta goes too far as a matter of course, and so do, frankly, some of his CNN colleagues. Both April Ryan and Brian Karem were hired after dust-ups with press secretaries from the White House. That they're hired to cause trouble. Acosta goes farther than anybody else in that press room. It's obvious he has no respect for Trump, but it was also obvious he has no respect for the office of the president. And so, yes, shutting him down was perfectly fair. Frankly, I think it was overdue. As for taking his press pass, that was based solely on the fact, how do you want to put it, the arm bar that he gave the intern. No matter how many times I've looked at the video, I'm not super upset about it. Here's why I am bothered, though. You look at it and you say, if Donald Trump did this to a female reporter, the American news media would be calling for his impeachment. So it's either wrong both times or right both times. Take your pick.
Many members of the media say President Trump is a danger to a free press and has gone too far. Yet some argue that the media has gone too far, not showing respect to the president. Your thoughts?
Well, the media have been on a full-on campaign to take down Trump ever since they realized he might actually win back in 2016. So before that, they gave him tons of loving PR, $3 billion or more from it, until they realized that he wasn't going to divide the GOP. He was actually going to unite most of it and stood a chance to win. Look, yes, all of this animus on every side is too far. We are still a United States. I would like to see us all united. But when the press 24/7 try to take it to conservatives, take it to Christians, take it to Republicans, any sort of subset that they disagree with, at some point in time, yes, everybody on the right sees Donald Trump as the person fighting back, and that's what they get.
What about the Sarah Sanders tweet and the edited video? Is that being blown out of proportion?
It sure seems like it. I mean, you watch the original video. She just retweeted somebody's video. If we're really going to be that fixated on retweets now on Twitter, then the whole world's going to change. I think it's Joy Reid from MSNBC who's right now in court about it, the problems of her own retweeting. Look, the medium is very rapid, and look at it. I don't think anybody would notice any difference. But the point is, if you go back to the original tape, there's definitely a collision. And in fact, right afterwards, Acosta says something like, "Pardon me, miss," or something like that. So it's obvious. I wouldn't be upset about it, like I said, if it weren't for the press's hypocrisy.
And quickly, Trump says he's not being treated fairly by the media. Do you think either side's going to back down?
Well, I mean, the press certainly aren't going to back down. They've been running against him, and Trump, he's got nowhere to back down to. He either fights and wins or doesn't fight and loses. That's not much of a choice.
All right, Dan Gaynor, as always, we appreciate your work and insights, and we'll be right back.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Asia Bibi is finally on her way to safety. A French newspaper reported Bibi's lawyer said she is on a plane out of Pakistan and heading to an undisclosed location. Her acquittal from blasphemy charges against Islam set off protests and calls for a public hanging. She and her husband feared for their family's safety. It was unclear whether any of Bibi's family were on the plane out of Pakistan with her. The 79 school children kidnapped from a Presbyterian church in Cameroon have been released. The kidnapping took place late Sunday by an unidentified armed separatist group. The church leader confirmed that the children were returned Wednesday looking tired and psychologically tortured. 2 of the 3 staff members abducted are still being held. The church leader said he was closing the school due to lack of security. And CBN News Chief International Correspondent Gary Lane is with us now. Gary, first of all, let's talk about the Cameroon situation. Why would they want to kidnap students from a Christian school there?
Basically money and attention, I think, Mark. This was a group called the Amba Boys. The Amba Boys are a militia that is a separatist one. They want a separate state in the northwestern part of Cameroon. That's what their goal is. They get money to continue to fund their movement and also attention for their movement. So this is what that was all about.
What is the situation like for Christians overall in Cameroon?
Christians not too bad, except for this type of situation, because they do have a Christian president. The previous president was a Muslim. This president, Paul Biya, has been president since 1982. So, Mark, for about 36 years. And what the separatists want, their own state, because they say Christians and English-speaking people are marginalized in their society. They say they're second-class citizens, so they want a separate state.
Let's now talk about Asia Bibi. It's not known if her family is with her on that plane leaving Pakistan. Yeah. So what's going on here? It's obvious that the family's in danger. Talk about that.
Well, it's confusing a little bit because inside Pakistan right now, the rumor is, no, Asia Bibi hasn't left at all. She's still there. Her family is still there. But we have sources that say, no, she is out of the country. She is safe in a Western country, undisclosed location. So we don't really know who to believe at this point, Mark. All we know is we need to continue to pray for her safety and the safety of her family.
Very, very true. And why do you think Pakistan, Gary, finally acquitted her after all these years? Do you think it was pressure from the rest of the world?
Well, yes, I think that was part of it. But first and foremost, we've got to say, it was a lot of Christians around the world were praying. So it was divine intervention. God heard those prayers and he responded to those prayers. Secondly, President Trump back in September withdrew about $300 million in aid to Pakistan, to the Pakistan military, saying, look, you guys aren't doing a good enough job of fighting terrorism. You're allowing Taliban to go back and forth across your border into Afghanistan, where they're killing Afghans, also killing American troops. You need to stop that. So we're going to pull $300 million in aid. So I think they want to see that aid restored. And one way to gain favor is to do this in the wake of Andrew Brunson being released from Turkey. They know that President Trump means business. And before he can impose sanctions on the leadership there in Pakistan, they felt, oh, we better do something. But I've got to believe that it was God that answered all those prayers of Christians, faithful Christians, that were praying for years for her safety and her release.
Oh, definitely. I totally believe that. The spiritual angle is so important.
Certainly.
Yes, God
Let's not
intervened
forget that.
on her behalf. And what was her condition like when she left prison? Do you know anything about that as far as her physical or mental condition?
You know, there are very few reports about that. They're being very tight-lipped, the government, about her condition. But there were reports earlier. I know one reporter went in and had interviewed her some time ago and said he thought she was in the early stages of dementia. And that's because she is a 51-year-old mother who's been in prison for 9.5 years in solitary because she's not safe being in the general population of the prison. So she's been by herself in a jail cell. What do you do for 9.5 2.5 years by herself in a jail cell. She's been reading her Bible, but other than that, she doesn't have much interaction with other people. It was allowed out of her jail cell maybe once a week for about a half an hour, but other than that, she just sits there. So that can affect you physically and emotionally, mentally as well.
Quickly, Christians in Pakistan, the church in Pakistan, where do they go from here?
Well, the church in Pakistan is hoping that this is a new day for them, but they're very skeptical of that because for years, as only 2% of the population there, they're second and third class citizens there in that country. They're terribly mistreated. They suffer. They're persecuted every day. And these blasphemy laws specifically target them on false allegations. They're used in conflicts against them, and they're not hopeful that those will be done away with anytime soon.
Okay, our senior international.
Keep praying.
Yes, most
Keep
definitely.
praying for
yes,
Pakistan.
and to everyone out there as well. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your time. Well, coming up, another milestone for popular Christian singer and artist Lauren Daigle. Up-and-coming Christian artist Lauren Daigle performed on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon last night. She sang the title track of her second album, Look Up Child, that's already set Billboard records. Take a listen.
Making her late-night debut performing the title track from her new album, Look Up Child. Please welcome Lauren Daigle.
And you can see the full video at cbnnews.com on our entertainment page. And you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care about most at cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. You can do that by emailing newswatch at cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you're going to join us next time. Until then, goodbye and God bless.